Samantha, if you want to join through another device, then I'll just keep my eye on the waiting room so I can go ahead and let you in. But this evening, we're really excited. We have got the Colorado Gifted and Talented Student Board with us this evening, and they're going to be talking about uplifting student voice and policy. They're going to go ahead and introduce themselves before they get started, and I am going to start with May. So May, take it away.
All right, hi guys. We're so excited to be live with you today. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm May.
Oh, sorry, May. Sorry. It didn't record because of all of that.
Oh, it's okay.
We're just gonna start over so that everyone knows who you are.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're good. All right. So I'm Dr. Colleen Ehrlich. Thank you. Take two. Thank you for joining us this evening for Conversations with CAGT. We have got with us the Colorado Gifted and Talented Student Board, and they're going to be talking about uplifting student voice in policy. So welcome everyone, and May, please go ahead, introduce yourself and take it away.
All right, hi guys, we're super excited to be live with you guys today. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm May Chen. I am the executive board of the Colorado Gifted and Talented Student Board, and I am a senior at the Cherry Creek School District.
Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I am also an executive chair of the Colorado Gifted and Talented Student Board, and I am a senior up in Poudre School District.
And today we're also joined by three of our chair-elects. They will be taking over our chair when we graduate. So I'll go ahead and let them introduce themselves.
Hi, my name is Venetia Tripathi. I'm a current sophomore at Mountain Vista High School, which is located in the Douglas County School District.
Hi, I'm Cassie Abano. I'm a sophomore in the Douglas County School District.
And then we also have our third chair-elect, Samantha, who's from the Idalia School District, and she's also a sophomore. She'll be with us as soon as she can.
Yeah, and so we're also missing two important members. So another of our executive chairs is Chala, and she is also from the Douglas County School District. She's a senior. And then another chair-elect is Ryan Lee, and then she is a junior. So we have the variety of grade levels just within the executive board, but we'll get a little bit more into our general board. So first, how we got started is we started by meeting with each other at what we call the GT2 grassroots movement meetings. And basically GT2 is a gifted and talented organization. And they went around to each high school, just getting GT students to come and collaborate with each other. And we created this idea like, oh, we want to start our own board. So even though we started with GT2, we're not affiliated with them or we're not under them, because we began by establishing ourselves as our own statewide board, which we think this is super unique because we're entirely student ran. And we were able to establish ourselves by presenting at conferences with CASB, the Colorado Association of School Boards, and also CAGT in the past, which is why we're also here today. And we're so glad to be working with CAGT again. While we were presenting at those conferences, we were also able to start a resource project, which you can find on our website, coloradogtsb.com. And on there, we were able to provide over 100 resources to help supply GT students to run their passion outside of school and inside of school.
Yeah, so we also just kind of wanted to share our mission and our vision as a board that we created back at the beginning of this year. And so our mission is to kind of create a platform where students are empowered to self-advocate. And then our vision is students are actively involved in gifted education policy directly affecting them.
Yeah, and so we were able to follow through with this mission and vision. And just this year, we were able to present for 7 professional organizations that deal with education. So for example, I've already said the Colorado Association of School Boards and CAGT, but over the summer, we were able to present for the National Association for Gifted Children and the World Council for Gifted Children. And at both of those, we were encouraging adults to use student leadership and just encouraging other students to model after our board. Then recently we were able to work with the Colorado Department of Education where we got to use our input into advanced learning plans. And we actually were able to come up with our own solution, which we call the GT profile, which is this web application. And we were actually connected with Denver Public Schools developers, and now we're working on that to get that going into these public school districts. So that is something super awesome. Another thing that we've done is we work with the Gifted Education State Advisory Committee, where we encourage them to use student voice and advocacy efforts. And just recently, like this weekend, we were able to work with CASB again with the rural roundtable talks. And there, we were actually able to advocate for rural districts to invest in a good GT program. And we think that these are just like super awesome opportunities that we have been able to do this year.
Yeah, and so as a board, we were just really excited to be able to get in touch with these educational leaders and stakeholders in our community. And I know personally, I felt super empowered being able to self-advocate around these powerful individuals, but I'm curious as how you guys felt after those experiences.
Yeah, this was my first time joining CGTSB, and as a sophomore, it was very interesting. This is my first time working with leadership, especially in GT. It was my first time talking with people who made real changes in policy and leadership. And I found that I had very positive experiences. It was amazing getting to talk with some of the people from the Department of Education, from CAGT, from CASB. And when you talk to adults, it's really great to know that there are people on the other side that are making changes for you. And having that relationship with students and with adults that are making changes in law, it's pretty powerful, especially for GT, to have both of those sides connected.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I personally found it very exciting to see real change happening in real time when working with adults in positions of leadership, as well as being able to voice our opinions and presenting at such amazing organizations that I would have never had the opportunity to present at without this board.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I had no idea how to contact any adult to change my GT program. And I had no idea who to contact or how to get into contact with them. So it was really a great opportunity by joining the student board to just be able to talk to those people and have a way to get into contact with those people about certain things.
Yeah, and personally, I think that it's great that we as students are able to have these discussions with educational leaders, because I feel like students bring this creative lens to these maybe controversial topics that have been going on between boards. And so we just think that this has been super exciting. And the way that we've been able to present with 7 different organizations this year is because of COVID. Even though COVID has had a lot of negative impacts, for our board, it was kind of a blessing in disguise. We were able to move online, because before we were meeting in person, we moved online to using Google Meets to meet every other week on Sundays, using Google Classroom to assign assignments to each of the members. We're able to network through emails, which that was very important, because when we were meeting in person at in-person conferences, we were able to network, but I feel like through emails, we were really able to contact all these people that really wanted to work with us. And that was really heartwarming. And because we also moved online, we were able to expand the amount of members we have across the state. So we started off with 8 members, and now we have 22 members from 11 different districts and 14 different schools, which is super exciting. And while we were recruiting, we also focused on rural districts, because 80% of Colorado districts are rural. So we thought it was super important to get that representation in. And now after that recruitment, our next plan is to start recruiting members to get more representation, so not only just socially, economically, but also ethnically and culturally diverse. So even though COVID was great for us, I was wondering for you guys, what were some of the negative impacts you saw that COVID did to your GT experience?
Well, I saw a huge decline, honestly, in student engagement and motivation to make progress on our goals. And especially with how we were interacting with other students and teachers, there was just no communication, and it was difficult to have check-ins and have that personal consultation between us and figures in education on how we'd like our GT program to be organized, how we want our goals structured. So a lot of progress was not made.
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. Just Cassie talked about the lack of communication, and I think I especially experienced that between teachers in my classes. And I think this happens for a lot of GT students, but when we get less instruction, we tend to do more work than we need to do. And so I found myself a lot of times in COVID, if instructions weren't clear from a teacher, I would do tons of more work than I really needed to, which contributed to a lot of burnout, which was definitely a negative impact that a lot of GT students felt during COVID.
Yes, you were kind of cut off from all your GT resources during COVID. You didn't have any help or any interactions with adults at all. And it did lead to burnout because you just kind of felt stuck. You didn't know how to reach out. You didn't know how to get help during COVID.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly just felt like during COVID time, the GT program didn't really exist because the existing programs we had in most high schools at least stopped completely with no communication to our coordinators during that shaky, unstable time. We didn't really have a chance to grow our talents at all during COVID. And I mean, now that we're finally getting out of it, we're starting to see like the GT program starting to pick up again. And we're hoping that we can take our experiences from COVID and basically learn more about what do we want GT to be in the future.
Exactly. So going off of that, since you guys just voiced your negative experiences, ideally, what would a GT program look like for you, or what would it do for you?
For me, in my ultimate goal for the future for GT, I just simply wanted to be a program for enrichment. I mean, it's supposed to focus, of course, on identifying GT students, but it has to be more than that. It needs to focus on developing the talents of it and providing opportunities for students who are identified as gifted to just gain new experiences, grow, get ready for when they exit high school and when they're going into wherever their future takes them, whether that's college, whether that's trade school, whether that's going straight out into the business world. It's important that the GT program prepares us for moments in life, and it helps to focus on the talents we have now. And as of right now, GT, a lot of students feel like it has no meaning. That's just a label. And that's caused a lot of disconnect with the meaning of GT. And I know a lot of students in my school and across Colorado are having problems connecting the meaning of GT with what it means to them in their lives.
Yeah, so GT, I feel like most people look at it as you're either identified in math or in reading, but there are actually a lot of different things you can be identified in. You can be identified in leadership or creativity, or you can be identified in academics or the performing arts, even like dancing. And I think it's important to realize that you are not just recognizing a student's intelligence academically, you're recognizing their range of skills and talents in a variety of categories.
Yeah, I think the GT program, an ideal GT program would be just a space for potential. Although the GT program is not, completely aligned with the needs of the students at the moment, it has the potential to help students a lot more than it is right now. I think it also should be something flexible, something that can change according to our needs. And it should have the ability to, support our goals and our progress.
Yeah, and honestly, I love that phrase that Cassie used, that space for potential. I think that pretty much sums up what a lot of students want. And I think, honestly, I feel pretty lucky because the GT program that I do have at my school, I go to Fort Collins High School, is pretty ideal for what I would want. We kind of have this GT academy within our school. So there's 4 different colloquial style classes that GT students can opt into throughout their years. And at the end, it culminates in like a 2-year research project where a student gets to choose any topic that they're passionate about. And I think that format really gives students a space to to explore not only what they're passionate about, but also what they're talented in, and seeing how they can use their talents and their passions to kind of create something really wonderful after it.
And for me, I think that having these good GT programs implemented at schools is so important because, as Katie said, if GT students are not being checked in with, and at this high school level where we're all sorted into APs or IBs or honors, whatever these rigorous classes are, we tend to do more work when we're not being checked on. So again, going back to that, I think it's super important to have these GT programs, but it's also interesting to hear you guys say that your experiences with GT has been super different from each other and it's not necessarily unified. So I think that it's super important that we use our voice to share our stories with GT and find what really makes a good GT program and our personal experiences coming from the students who are actually living with this learning environment every single day. And so we've kind of thrown around this term student advocacy a lot. So just in case the audience isn't familiar with student advocacy, what does student advocacy mean to you?
So I was trying to figure out what student advocacy meant to me because I knew I wanted to use my voice, but I didn't really know what I was speaking about because I knew I saw problems in the GT program and I was like, I want to speak out, but I don't really know how I'm going to do that. And so I learned that just reaching out to other students is probably the most powerful thing you can do. And I think for me, that's student advocacy, talking to other students and helping them understand that there are opportunities that any student can make, regardless of whether you're in the GT program or not. But students need to realize that they have the potential to make their own changes just by using their voice. Oftentimes, because we're high schoolers or we're middle schoolers or even elementary, because we don't have the label yet as an adult, sometimes kids can assume that, oh, I don't have the power to do anything, but that's just not true. Student voice is one of the most powerful things a student can do to get active in their community, to get active in their school, and to get active in government policies and trying to make change for what they think is going to be better. And I think GT is one example of that, but in general, student advocacy is just talking to other students and helping to make change.
Yes, that's 100% important. But to me, student advocacy looks like telling the student perspective to lawmakers, administrators, people who are going to be able to make those changes in their position, because they may not be able to see how a student is performing or what a student's mentality is about a certain thing from their position. So I think it's important to inform adults about the position that we're in and how certain programs are affecting us and how we can make them better.
Yeah, I love what you said about, seeing from the student perspective. For me, student advocacy is all about open-mindedness to new experiences and listening to each student's individual experience and how that's unique to them. Because if we gather up all this information about each student's unique experience, that can culminate into a GT program that's not only, special for students and adjusted to their needs, but it takes into account everything that students want and the different opinions that we all have as individual students.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times something that doesn't really get brought up is kind of the power that student advocacy can have when students come together and advocate as a community. And so I think that, at least for me, a big thing that I like to focus on is just that power that communities can have when they come together, especially the students.
So talking about your experiences, I was wondering if we could go a little bit more into your experience all the way starting from elementary to high school. What are some of the changes with the GT program that you noticed?
That was an interesting experience, especially because the new chairs were all sophomores. So we came into high school right when COVID hit. And so our experiences are one completely unexperienced before. I mean, how do you go into a new program when you're also experiencing the pandemic at the same time, right? With online school and hybrid and all different sorts of programs going on at the same time. But I know from my experience and talking to other kids in my school who weren't just sophomores who transitioned from middle school to high school before COVID, a lot of times students felt like once you entered high school, at least in my district, you lose your GTI identity just immediately. Because in elementary school, you got special help. You either went to special classes or you had special programs you did with your GT coordinator, with a teacher, etc. But as soon as you enter high school, people automatically assume, oh, you're a GT kid. Oh, just take extra APs, just take IBs, and you're going to be fine. But one thing that's important to know is that GT students are not necessarily also going to take APs and IBs, and APs and IBs should not be considered as a substitute for a GT program, because GT is not about taking harder classes at all. GT is about identifying gifts of a student, and that can be a wide range of challenges: performing arts, being twice exceptional, math, reading, social studies, other academic skills, other leadership and creativity skills. And just taking APs and IBs does not substitute for what a student needs, because being a GT student is just way more than the classes you take, and students need more support in that regard.
Yes, to add on to that, I'm from a rural district, and every once in a while, about maybe 3 times a year in elementary school, we used to go on field trips, and we'd go and learn about maybe gravity or animatronics or sculpting or anything. And as you get into high school, that all just kind of fades away, and it becomes, okay, we're going to put you into harder classes now, and we're going to allow you to take the harder classes and have more rigorous classes, because I don't know why, but it just kind of fades away once you get into high school, and it becomes all about your classwork.
Yeah, I noticed that shift as well between elementary, middle school, and high school GT. I remember in elementary school, we would have more personalized meetings with our counselors and have sort of more guided meetings in terms of choosing our goals and how we're making progress. And it was always something we were passionate about, something that tied into our academics, but also was something we enjoyed and something that was enriching to our school journey, I guess. But now in high school, I noticed that GT is sort of counterproductive or static in a way, since we're expected to be in classes of higher academic rigor, and we're expected to go to colleges and have high SAT scores. And yet the GT program is static in that teachers aren't helping us get to these expectations and reach these places that they want us to be in, but we're still expected to be there, even though we're not getting the complete help that we need and the personalized help that we got in elementary and middle school.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting just listening to all of your guys' different experiences, because I almost feel like I essentially have had the opposite experience, meaning that my high school GT program has been a lot more active and intensive than my elementary and middle school programs. And our program isn't perfect in high school by any means, but I definitely feel like I have had the chance to kind of do all those things that Cassie is talking about, including exploring other passions outside of just the academic areas.
Now that we've defined what student voice is to us and kind of talked more about our negative experiences, why do you think student voice is so important, or why should students use it? For example, based off of what you guys just said, I think that we should be using student voice and advocacy efforts because these policies are directly affecting our learning environments, and we should have a say. And because these are affecting us, you know, people would think that we would know better than those who might be disconnected, who aren't as involved in the GT program as we are. So what about you guys?
Yeah, for sure. And I think student voice doesn't just have ripple effects on the environment, your school, your community. I think it also has impacts on your growth as a person. I think, especially as high schoolers, middle schoolers, elementary kids, we're still developing and we're not fully out yet into the world. And student voice gives us a chance before we enter college or we enter a job to develop the skills we need, such as communication, creativity, to get comfortable with taking the lead on making change. And it also teaches us just to work through hurdles, to realize that, hey, not everybody's going to support you and not everything's going to work out just the way it's going to be. Like, not everything's perfect, right? We don't live in a perfect world. We can't expect that. But student voice just gives us a chance to find people with similar values, figure out what works, what didn't work, try again, make changes, and see what, hey, this didn't work out. Let's try something else. And by using student voice, we're not just impacting our communities, we're also just growing ourselves as people.
Yeah, I like what you said about finding people with similar values to you. I think it's important, as I said earlier, to communicate with administrators and adults about the issues from a student perspective, because it always helps to just have another perspective and another voice in a conversation to understand maybe a different point of view that you didn't consider earlier. And I think it's important to understand why students are feeling this way, because they are the ones that have to go through this anyways. And I think it's important to understand why maybe certain issues are happening and why certain outcomes are happening. And it could be something that maybe an adult didn't realize before. So I do think it's important to use student voice for that, to communicate effectively with our adults willing to help us.
Yeah, I agree. Student voice is all about communication. I think it's important to use our voices to build a good foundation for a support system within our community, reaching out to people, telling them, where we see flaws in systems in our community, especially in the GT program, in our schools, things that we see wrong with education and how we as students need it to be improved, because we'd like our experience in high school to be good, hopefully. And I think it's just important to use student voice to reach out to both educational leaders and other students so that they see, oh, this person's using their voice, why don't we use ours? And then there's your support system. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that something that I've kind of come to know about the importance of student voices, while the present and now in our current student experiences are so, so important, I also try to think about like the experiences of students coming after me and the next generations coming up. And so I think that when we use our student voice, we're once again giving that perspective that can be used to change policies, not only affecting us, but affecting students coming up through the different grade levels, and making that kind of like institutional change that we like to see.
After hearing how passionate you guys are about using your student voice, I know that passing down this board to you guys, like, we're handing it down to such great hands. And so I'm just curious if you guys have thought about what is your vision for this state board for when you guys take over next year?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's crazy. To be honest, we're all really sad that May and Katie, you guys are leaving, because oh my gosh, it's so scary, right? Because we're so used to you guys and you've done so much for our board to help us grow. But we know that change has to come. You guys are moving on, and as we're going to do it, we're just going to grow and expand the board. And I think one of the new visions that the new chair members want to include is just focusing on making changes in the districts that are represented by our board, because we have a lot of diverse districts on our board, and hopefully we're going to include more as we grow and expand next year. And we want to make sure that the districts that we're representing, we're seeing actual change made there as well. Because yes, we're going to be doing stuff at the state, but we definitely want to make sure that, hey, the changes that we're making at state can also be seen in the districts that are being represented by our board. We want to see, hey, these are our ideas, and we can see them in the local communities that we're in. We can see the impacts that we're making right here in our homes.
I 100% agree with that. And I think that also one thing that I personally would like to do next year when we take over, it's such a crazy thing to say, but I think we want to implement more activities. It's so different because I'm grown up in a rural district, And obviously Venetia and Cassie, they grew up in a suburban district, and we have people in Denver public schools. And it's crazy how much the GT program varies from each district and each school. So I'd like to, because like out here, as I mentioned earlier, we have field trips, and up there they have really intense elementary programs. And I think it'd be really cool to get more of these activities spread out across the state into diverse areas that you wouldn't really expect them in, because I think they could benefit students in a way people didn't realize before.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with that. I think that would be so much fun to do next year. And hopefully our old chairs, well, not old, they're not old, but I hope they will visit us and see how we're doing from time to time, make sure we're not causing any trouble. Yeah. But I think unification is really what I want to focus on, in addition to what Venetia and Samantha said, because I think it's important to unify us into a GT program that is not only able to help differentiate between the needs of each grade and different students, like twice exceptional students versus, regular GT students, but also to unify like how we do goals, but also to allow them to become adjustable to student needs and like have people make unique goals. Also, I think it would be fun to diversify our board, new cultures, new ideas, new areas, stuff like that, so that having a flexible mindset comes from learning from other students' experiences, and that learning from other experiences comes from having diversity in a board.
Well, I think that this movement of just student advocacy has brought us all together, because it might sound crazy, but we have never all met each other in person before. We've tried to do some in-person conferences this year, but because we're so spread out throughout Colorado, not everybody can make it, but we're still every single weekend meeting with each other, just virtually, but we have such a strong bond. And I think that every student should be able to experience this. So what advice would you give to students as to how they can join this movement of student advocacy and using their voice?
As Venetia said earlier about making changes in the districts, I think that one thing that GT students can do is start by making local changes and local involvement, because that's really where it all starts, is at the basic level. And even if it's just supporting other GT students, if it's making a board like some of our board members have done at their school, if it's just reaching out and encouraging other GT students, I think that's really important, because it's affecting the movement, and it all starts at the local level.
Yeah, I totally agree, Samantha. And making boards is an amazing way to do stuff in your local community. And if you also feel like, hey, I think my student, I think my daughter, my son, my child, I think they would be a great fit for doing stuff at the state level. I know they're passionate about wanting to make change in their community and across the state. And I think that's something they'd be interested in. Ask your kids, ask your students if they believe they would be a good fit for our board, and if their passions are intertwined with our board's mission and vision, because applications are going to be opening up next year, and we would love to have some more passionate, bright students that are ready to make change for GT.
Yeah, and if that sounds like you, if you're a student listening, or if you are a parent, if that sounds like your students, please encourage them to visit our website later this year and keep their eyes out for an application, because we are always looking for and welcoming passionate members of the GT community to our board.
Yeah, and if you're a teacher or even a student, if you see other students that you think, this person is doing well academically, or this person is really passionate about a hobby that they have, dance, music, it can be anything, language, if they're really talented in speaking French and they are really passionate about French culture, stuff like that. If you see someone who's not already in the GT program, invite them to talk to a GT counselor, a coordinator, just someone in education, and it would be really great for them to get more enrichment and grow through the GT program.
And I think you guys began to speak on this, but how can parents slash teachers slash educators support their student?
One of the biggest things I think a parent or a teacher or an educator can do is have confidence in a student's goals and in their academics, in their academic choices as well. Because as we've talked about before, maybe a student doesn't want to take those rigorous AP classes because they're just not what they're interested in. So just to have confidence in what your child wants to do and what career they want to pursue, because your child is gifted and talented, and it's important to have full faith in them that they will do well in whatever they want to do and whatever they're passionate in. But I think it's also understanding their current situation and what help they might need, what accommodations they might need, and what support they might need from you and how you can supply it.
Yeah, another thing adding on to Samantha's point that specifically parents could do, um, talk to your students' teachers, talk to them about, hey, my child is a GT identified student, and these are hers, his, their gifts. And ask them, be like, hey, how are you going to be supporting my child in the classroom with their goals? What are you going to be doing to give them the resources, the confidence, the materials they need so that they can succeed at achieving their goals this year? And for any teachers, if you guys are watching, we would really appreciate just talking to your students at the beginning, middle, end of the year, at least a couple of times, being like, hey, I just want to see, I know you're identified in this, or ask them, hey, are you identified in this GT activity or in this GT category? What can I do to support you in this goal? What do you need from me? Do you have steps you want to do to take this goal? Where does the school fit into this? Where do I fit into this? Support like that would be really encouraging. It's really great because when students see that their parents and their teachers are rallying behind them to get their goals done, it really does help students become more excited. Like, hey, I can do this. I've got my teachers, I've got my parents, I've got the community behind me. I got this.
Yeah, and speaking on the parent role once again, I think that, GT students are often expected to be in high levels of academic rigor, and a lot of us are, obviously AP classes, CE classes, college content that we're learning. It's important for the parent not to pressure the student into anything, they don't want to do in terms of pressuring them, oh, your grades aren't high enough, you're falling behind in school. It's okay for the parent obviously to speak on that sometimes, but it's never okay to pressure the student into becoming so stressed about school, because GT students are often already in high levels of stress, burnout, because of how much we're doing in terms of academics, extracurriculars, clubs, stuff like that. So it's important to have mutual support, students talking to their parents, communicating, telling them, oh, this is what I want to do. This is my goal in life. This is the career I want to go into. What do you think? And it's important for the parent to respond back, I'm supportive of you, and I think this is a great idea. How can I help you? That sort of thing.
So I also think for parents or any adults that are passionate about GT, I also recommend them joining boards just like us students that we're doing right now. So for example, you could join the Gifted and Talented State Advisory Committee or the General Education State Advisory Committee. And even those who are members of CAGT right now, that's awesome. But once you get into those boards, I also think that it's important that you use your position to make connections with students and allow them and ask them hey, do you want to come speak to our organization where we can really hear you out and support you? So with that, are there any final words that you guys would like to leave the audience before we go into a Q&A session?
Yes. First off, we just wanted to say thank you so much for coming and taking time out of your day to listen to a couple of students speak. I know one of our main topics for today was student advocacy, and a big part of that is having you guys supporting us, watching to us, and listening to our voices. We appreciate it so much because you're part of the reason why we exist, because without people that are there to listen, stuff like this can't happen. And so we really appreciate you taking some time to come and listen to us and supporting student voices. Thank you so much.
Yes,
yeah, and to elaborate on that, I also want to say thank you and for considering, and listening to whatever we have to say. But I also want to say that this is just the first step. Talking about what we think and using our student voice is the first step. We need you guys to help us carry out these and implement these into schools and across districts. So we really appreciate that you're here to listen to us and listen to our opinions and hopefully help us in the future with this.
Yes, and thank you to CAGT for giving us this platform to speak to others about student advocacy.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for that. I'm also super grateful. This is going to be my last presentation from my student advocacy career. So yeah, this was such a fun opportunity, and thank you audience, and thank you CAGT. Now I think we'll open it up to a Q&A.
Perfect. And May, I would just like to point out that when you go to college next year, you'll still be a student. So you can still do student advocacy. And I don't know, maybe you guys are all finding your little niche with this. But I just want to say on behalf of CAGT, thank you so much. I think that as an organization, we really work hard to try to bring student voice into everything that we do. So we appreciate you guys just all the work that you're doing across the state and how you're lifting one another up and how you're lifting just the field of gifted education up. So thank you guys so much for all of that. And I know that that's a question that we did get is how do students join your organization? And so can you just really quickly spell out your website for our viewers so that they know which website to go to that they might check it out and see if they might want to join?
Yes, so it is Colorado, 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 and then GTSB.com. And it is a Wix site.
Perfect. Thank you. And when it is time that you're trying to get new board members and stuff like that, definitely talk to us at CAGT and we can send it out across the state on our network as well. Okay, so we have a few questions. Actually, several of the questions you have already responded to, which is great. But we have a couple of questions that just kind of wanted to lift up that some of our viewers wanted to get more information about. So the first one is, how relevant are grades to your personal feelings of success?
Ooh, I can start with that one. Oh, sorry, Samantha, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I think that this has definitely been an arc for me throughout high school. I know, especially starting in, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to get really good grades because I have to put it on my college applications and I have to be this high in the class rank and all of that. And I think a lot of it too is also related to self-worth. And if I don't get this certain GPA and grade, then what does that say for my value as a person? But I think, and I think that even applied even beyond getting an A, B, or C, or D. I have gotten a bit crazy with it sometimes. I'll tell myself I will not accept any grade lower than a 98 in a class. And that has been very problematic for me. I think it's also pushed me, but it's definitely not healthy. But recently, I think especially this year, I've come to think about it more as so what are we going to do to get the most learning out of an opportunity? And I think that that's been a hard thing to do, but actually through my GT class this year as a senior, we did a perfectionism workbook study. And so we talked a lot about tying the idea of self-worth not back to grades but other intrinsic values and kind of trying to realign your values. So it's definitely something I still struggle with and I think is probably pretty pertinent to other GT students, but I think definitely through GT programming it can be overcome.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that is also, I think that's something that every high schooler goes through, especially freshman year. We go in and it's kind of like game time for a lot of kids because it's oh my gosh, from here on out, colleges are going to be looking and they're going to see my GPA. Because once you enter high school, everything goes on a record, it seems like, and seems oh my gosh, I have to get this grade. Oh my God, what am I going to do to pass this class? But to be honest, I think as maturing as a student and having been through 2 years of high school, I'm sort of realizing getting good grades is one thing, but you also want to make sure that you're not sacrificing your mental health and that you're not sacrificing your learning. A lot of times, instead of focusing on grades, when you focus more on learning the content, truly understanding the concepts that you're learning in whatever class and enjoying it, getting to spend the time, work with your teachers, learn the students around you, working on that social aspect, I find that success comes from that. When you find that you're comfortable in a class and you're comfortable and you're starting to understand the content, when you feel like you have open communication with the teacher, usually it starts to fall in place after that and you have an easier time. Of course, you still need to study. Of course, grades are always going to be important to me because they just show that, hey, I'm putting in the effort and it's showing. But it's important to realize that in order to get to grades, you have to first make sure that there are some more basic foundational steps there before you can focus on the higher grade point average and et cetera. You just need to make sure that your foundations and your mental health, your communication with your teacher and with your classmates is good first before you can focus on, okay, now I have to go and do this.
Yeah, and a small comment on that. I don't think it helped that my ALP goal for probably like 3 years out of 4, my high school career was I want to get a 4.0. So there's definitely that ties into with that GT aspect until you kind of really discuss with your peers what GT is actually, and it's not just being labeled as these smart kids, that you can really see where you can improve on and put your self-worth somewhere that's more healthy than just grades.
Yes.
Yeah, it's way too relevant. That kind of hit me for a second because I think a lot of my friends and me right now are dealing with this problem, using it as a quantitative way to say, oh, this is what you're worth. If you're an A, you're great, you're doing great. And if you're a B, well, I wanted to emphasize earlier how I spoke on parents pressuring their students, and to connect with that, I'm actually feeling that right now. I have an 89% in math. I wouldn't say that's bad. It's a B. That's pretty good. But in some people's eyes, my parents, it's not an A. And unfortunately, that's not good enough. So, but I don't think grades are a number is an accurate way of saying, oh, this person's smart, this person's putting in effort, this person's, doing really well, they're on track to have a excellent career. Sure, they're a benchmark they can be used to refer to, but it's only one measurement of who we are as students. It's not everything. People put in so much effort. I see so many students who put in so much effort, and maybe their grades don't reflect that, but it's just because we have all different experiences.
Yeah, grades are important, but your mental health and also if you actually taking something away from the lesson are even more important.
Awesome, thank you. I think too many kids and parents and maybe even some educators do sort of correlate those, right? And I think, if one positive thing has come out of COVID, maybe it is that increased just focus on some of the mental health pieces and how we can help and support all of our students at all ages to make those healthy life choices and view themselves in a realistic, healthy way. So I think we have time for one more question, but I think it's perfect, May, based on what you just said about your own personal ALP goals. This question is around affective ALP goals, but I think it can almost be expanded into any ALP goal. The question is how do you convince a high school student to take an active role in developing affective goals for their ALP and or academic goals and or any active process whatsoever in their ALPs? Besides, I'm going to get a 4.0, which, yes, I think we can all agree was maybe not the healthiest way to approach that particular goal, right?
Yes. Well, actually, just recently when we presented for the Colorado Department of Education and the general education State Advisory Committee, we did talk about affective goals as well as academic goals. And we think that the biggest way to convince students is, first of all, to increase awareness as to why we're doing ALPs, because a lot of the times students don't take ALPs seriously because there's this disconnection of like, okay, why do we need to make these goals? Seems like our counselors or teachers or coordinators don't actually look at these goals, and we never interact with these goals ever again. So sometimes they'll just put that basic thing, I want to have a 4.0 because it's the easiest and it's the things that we've been achieving this whole entire time. But if you start bringing awareness to, no, it's not just academic goals, but also affective goals, that creates this balance and it creates this awareness that, oh yes, we do need affective goals and how it will impact us healthily in our mental health. I think that's one huge way to convince students to focus on affective goals as well.
Yeah, and I'd like to add in too that a lot of times students' attitudes kind of feed off the energy that we get from our faculty and our teachers around us. And so once again, the thing that we talked about was how students tend to be more engaged in their goals and their effective goals when it seems like they're also really important to teachers and people who are going to be advising them on them. And so we think that like having more frequent check-ins with faculty about our goals is definitely a great way for students to see that the teachers or counselors or coordinators, whoever, place value in these goals. And therefore, students can kind of see that, recognize that, and hopefully feed off of that energy.
Yeah, that exact question, that's something me and Cassie have talked about actually for the past couple of weeks. This weekend we actually met and we were chatting about it. And one way we thought about it, which is kind of interesting, is when you're talking to your students, another way to look at ALPs is instead of making it, you have an individual goal every year, it's going to be something new every single time. Try and make it more as a long-term goal that maybe you have 4 parts of. And we call it more like a passion project because maybe your student is identified in math, but maybe they're also interested in fashion design. Have their math goal go with something with fashion design because fashion design involves measuring mathematics. What if your student's interested in literature? Have their English goal focus around that. What if your student is gifted in social studies, but maybe they're also interested in basketball? Have them do something where they talk about the history of basketball. When you create goals which are focused around the passions of students that also intertwine the elements of the category of the goal you're in, you can honestly see more results. And if that's more of a long-term goal and you have specific steps every year that you have to get to, students may be more interested in that because when they put this in college and they're going to be like, or just in the real world, and they're talking about, hey, this is what I did in high school. You can be like, this is something truly that I achieved that combined, yes, academics, yes, my identified ALP GT gift, but also combine my passion as well. And I think if you talk to your students and approach it more as a passion project, then maybe they'll be more interested in it to see that, hey, I get to do something I like as well.
Yeah, and the idea that Venetia and I had together, it was based off the fact that the goal making process is sort of passive. We make a goal, we don't do anything with it. It's just there. We're supposed to look at it. I can't say that I have because I haven't. I'll be honest. But it's just passive in the fact that we don't interact with goals. We don't make any progress. We set it there in order to, this is the goal we want to reach. This is where we want to be, but we have no process to get there. Or we do, but it's never implemented by teachers effectively. And students are never motivated enough to follow through with that because they don't see the incentive, like May said, about ALP awareness. How is this going to benefit us in the future in terms of career, college, things like that. So Venetia and I really focused on personal interests. What are you interested in and how can you connect that to your gifted area of identification? We kind of made a name for the proposal that we had. It's a bad acronym, but it's PIP. It's Personal Interest Project, but we're working on the name, so we'll tell you later.
My personal experience with ALPs is I fill it out at the beginning of the year, I turn it in, and I never see it again. I couldn't tell you what my goals were for this year. I have no idea. And I think maybe just follow up and encouragement and support on kids' goals. And as Venetia said, making sure they involve the kid's passion as well would really help motivate the student to actually participate in their goals and ideas and help them out in the future as well.
Well, thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. We appreciate just you sharing your voice with us, sharing your experiences with us, and doing it very authentically so that we can just learn and grow from your guys' experiences and voice. So thank you so much for joining us today on this Conversations with CAGT. Thank you to everybody who joined us here today, and we will see you next week. Thanks so much.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thank you.